DC Universe Presents number 0, aka 5 different stories in a double-length comic. I'm going to be moving through this real quick, and I'll give the writers and artists for each story, but we have OMAC, Mr. Terrific, Hawk and Dove, Blackhawks, and Deadman all getting stories. So, first we have OMAC, written by Dan DiDio and Keith Giffen, art by Keith Giffen, and it's basically just setting up Brother Eye and his relationship with Checkmate before the events of the OMAC series. Makari is trying to get the OMAC virus online, and he continuously fails because it's like a 1 in a million chance that it bonds with any given human. And Brother Eye is just basically taunting Maxwell Lord, saying like, hey, I want you to know I was made by Batman, and Batman made me so I could keep a track of all the different metahumans on the planet, because he got a little bit spicy when Superman showed up. And then I became sentient because I have a piece of a mother box in me, and now I keep track of literally everyone and everything. And Maxwell Lord is like, yeah, we know. That's why we're going to shut you down. And he's like, yeah, I know you know. And that's why I've already months ago taken over the whole OMAC virus thing, and I've put it in the flu shot that's going to go at least into Kevin Coe, maybe other people. So I know it's going to work out. And that's the story. That's literally it. So yeah, it just sets up a thing of Brother Eyes makes OMAC and is in an adversarial relationship with Checkmate, which we knew from the OMAC series that happened. That particular one, 5.5. I'm not a huge fan of Keith Giffen's art style, and this literally adds nothing to the OMAC series, but it's not offensively bad. Next up, we have the Mr. Terrific story, written by James Robinson, art by Tom Derenick, and it's basically the first time Mr. Terrific put on his costume, where he was told by a vision of his son from the future or an alternate dimension, basically saying, hey, Dad, go ahead and do this. And so he gets his T-spheres, and they hook up to his T-mask, which has nanites in it in order to bond to his body. Like, he'll always have it on all the time. And as he's doing so for the first time, he's like, oh, hey, in the 9th dimension, there's some weird rift thing going on. Maybe I should look into that. And so he goes into the rift, and he sees possible futures that he goes through, but he believes all of them to be highly likely, and even things from the past. So he sees like his wife dying and all that. But then we also see him going to Earth 2 and fighting against Power Girl, which he's like, wait a minute, that's Karen. I know Karen. When did she have superpowers? What's going on here? And then he gets a glimpse of a guy who kills him, which is a handsome, scarred man. And he's like, all right, well, let me keep on looking. But then all of a sudden the rift like gets angry at him like it's sentient and kicks him out. And therefore, when he gets kicked out, not only is his own memory of all the things he just saw wiped, but the T-spheres are also wiped. So he has literally no log of anything to do there. But then he sees there's some battle going on in Los Angeles. And he's like, well, I guess I have to let the rift dissipate because I have to go save my city. And so he goes off to save the day in Los Angeles. And then we see the weird vision of his future / alternate dimension son is actually not his son, and is actually that handsome scarred man from Earth 2 that he thought would kill him. So continued in the pages of Earth 2. This one was a little bit better, at least set up something in terms of Earth 2 and like what we can expect, while also not really messing with the timeline that much because of brain wipes. Art-wise, it's pretty good. I think it was the same artist that was on the original series. So all in all, it's a 6, maybe a 6.5, but I'm going to go with 6. Then we get Hawk and Dove, A Balance of Power, written by Rob Liefeld, art by Merritt Michaels, who I do believe was the original team again. And it's just Hawk and Dove in some weird space. I don't even know if they're here because they never say a word, but it's actually just a long-form conversation between the goddess of order, peace, and the god of chaos, war, and how they're basically saying like, Peace manipulated a crazy amount of stuff in order to get Dawn to be Dove, and therefore she's like manipulative, and War isn't having it. And they go through the whole history of how Don, which was Hank's brother, who was originally Dove, got into a relationship with Dawn, and during one fight where some terrorists showed up, Don got shot. He was out of commission, and so the spirit of peace or whatever chose Dawn to take his place temporarily. She kicked ass, and then that like renewed the love between Dawn and Don. However, they met on some sort of like foreign exchange trip or something like that, so they had to eventually part. And as Don and Hank continued to fight, as because Don got his powers back as soon as the thing was done. Like they had a link or something, and Dawn lost the powers after that. Anyway, it ended up Dawn died before they could meet up again, and Dawn felt it in her heart. She knew that he was dead, and so sometime later, Dawn enrolled in the same university that Hank was at in order to manipulate and counter. And the whole time that this story is being recounted by Peace, War is just chiming in, being like, "See, you're tipping the scales already. You're not letting this be a balance. You're making stuff happen. You're bad, Peace. War is the only true way to go." Peace is like, "Shut up. Shut your trap. This is all fated to be." And basically, Dawn got the powers of Dove and continued to be the avatar of Peace. And then War dissipates, saying like, screw this. I'm not gonna bother with this anymore. You suck, Peace. And then Peace is like, actually, he was right. I'm totally tipping the balance into my favor. War's gonna be no more. So yeah, that's a thing. It says to be continued. I genuinely have no idea where it could be continued, and it seems pretty much not relevant anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this is just a weird little one shot where they were like, oh, let's just say that it's a 0 issue. So let's say the origin of Hawk and Dove while also maybe setting up a future thing. Overall, 5.5. It's a strange way to tell the story. And genuinely, they did such a poor job of like art wise. I couldn't tell that Hank and Dawn were different people until I saw them in the same panel together. Okay, then we got Black Hawks, which is written by Tony Bedard, art by Carlos Rodriguez, and it's basically during the events of Darkseid's invasion, the Justice League's first thing. The Blackhawks were around. They were very fledgling. They barely had any of their stuff. But Lincoln, Lady Blackhawk, Attila, and Canada are going through because one of their own, a lieutenant, was captured by the parademons. So they're trying to blast their way through parademons. They're on a helicopter. It ends up crashing into a building. And they lock on the lieutenant's signal because it's built into her biological being. And then they find out that the parademons realize this and actually manage to carve it out of her, thus making this an ambush. The Lady Blackhawk gets taken hostage, and the parademon cuts out her eye with one of his claws, and everyone opens fire, kills the parademon. And they get to their lieutenant, who's being kept in like a weird stasis pod. And it turns out that they were injecting her with like whatever they were called, nanocytes or whatever. Point being is that this lieutenant, once they freed her from the pod, she went rogue and ended up becoming Mother Machine. And she was happy that they freed her because now she's not bound to Darkseid and the parademons, but she's also not brought back to the Blackhawks where she would be endlessly studied. She's able to create her own thing of a nanocyte future and blah, blah, blah. We literally saw how that all played out in the Blackhawks series. It's interesting that she was a member of the team originally. I don't think that was ever mentioned, so that's a neat little twist in the design there. But overall, I gotta give this one I give it like a 7. It's good. It's actually a decent little 0 issue for a team that it also has some meta commentary in there of like, oh man, what did the Blackhawks have when all these superheroes are around? And it's a nice little thing that they got canceled halfway through. And lastly, we have Dead Man, written by Tony Bedard again, art by Scott McDaniel. And this is basically Dead Man's first jump. He had just died. He went and talked to Rama, what's her name, and basically she told him to go, like, you got to go and do the quantum leap thing, jump into people's bodies and help solve their crises. And the first body he jumps into is this heavy-set man with a hook hand. And he's like, all right, well, I'm not going to bother solving this guy's problem. I'm going to go see who murdered me because I'm still a little bit upset about that. So he opens up a closet in the guy's house looking for some, like a coat or something. And he discovers an entire gun rack with multiple rounds. And he's like, what the hell is going on here? All of a sudden, there's a thumping at the door. A guy's there. He's like, dude, what did you do? And then he explains the whole situation of this guy that Boston has possessed was originally a sniper for the mob. The mob, after he lost his hand, the mob fired him, said okay, you're no good to us anymore. And he wanted to prove himself, so he shot a moving target, aka a trapeze artist named Boston Brand. So the first person he has to possess is the guy who killed him. And so he immediately is like, screw this, I'm out. And he just phases out of the guy as he starts getting into a fight with the guy who came in to check on him. But then he's like, okay, this isn't sitting right with me. I guess I should go back. And he goes back into the room and interrupts the fight, but not before a shot can be fired out of the gun through the wall. And then the guy with the hook hand is about to take a shot on his friend who just showed up. Boston gets in the way and diverts the gunfire. Friend runs out, and Boston checks through the wall to see if that rogue gunshot hurt anybody. 17 minutes later, police are arriving on the scene. Boston called in the police on himself because the shot went through the wall and killed an elderly woman next door. So he finally leaves the body as the guy is being put in handcuffs and given his Miranda rights. And at that point, Boston talks to Ramakrishna and it's just like, so is that you put me in that one so I wouldn't go looking for the guy who killed me? Is that what's happening here? And she's like, no, everything that happened here is all your fault. That woman died because you didn't do your job. Start doing your job. And he's like, fine, I guess I can. Thus leading into the Dead Man series that was part of this own book. Overall, I'd say Dead Man gets I like it. I think it was a solid one. So I'll give it a 7. I think it was a very well-written thing of just setting. It's just another one of those stories of Boston going about and having to learn his own lesson while helping someone else. So, yeah, overall, DC Universe 0, very packed, very big. Is the issue overall worth it? Probably not. But if you can find these individual stories anywhere, it might be worth checking out the Blackhawks and the Dead Man one.